once I finished this study, being a postgraduate at the university, you have so much time. Your time is, you have to plan your research yourself. And so I was then using some of my time to be the president of the University Film Society and writing film reviews for a student magazine, which meant I went to some of the cinemas nearby where I was studying and helped to advise on their programming for films which I had seen at press screenings. So I had a taste of what it's like to be a film journalist. But I didn't really think I was going to be taking that career. And since I had been in the world of academic study, initially I was thinking probably of staying at university in some form or other. But the person who was my examiner for my thesis had connections with the authorities in West Berlin, and he said he could get me a job, even if it was a temporary one, but it would allow me to make a start of working in Germany, which was where I really wanted to go. I wanted to go to Germany and live and work there if possible. And so I went to Berlin to work for a film and cultural festival which takes place in different European cities each year. This has been going on now since I think 1986. It's called the European City or European Capital of Culture. And in that year, in 1988, this was when I finished my studies, it was in West Berlin. And so I was going to start working for this festival in the organization. And whilst I was in Berlin to make arrangements, I visited the Berlin Film Festival and said to them, I'm going to be here next February, maybe we need somebody as an interpreter, as a person to do Q&As, translating from German into English. And then they contacted me whilst I was still in Berlin and said, we need somebody for our daily newspaper. We have a newspaper which is produced by the festival, a daily with reviews and interviews with producers, filmmakers, and we need somebody as a translator. So I started there, and not only was I translating other people's work, but I also had the opportunity to interview people as well. So from 1 minute being at university, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, I'd be there in Berlin interviewing people, some people who had appeared in my thesis. So that was quite an interesting start to be working in the film industry after only really seeing it from outside. And also being in Berlin was quite an experience. I've never been to such a big film festival before. Berlin being, along with Venice and Cannes, the 3 big festivals internationally, certainly at that time. And Berlin had a special function, being like a bridge between East and West, had a traditional role, and yes, and also being, of course, West Berlin in the middle of East Germany, this little island in the middle of East Germany, had also a very special place in European politics, history, and also the film industry. I stayed in Berlin and worked for the other festival, and then continued then following year to work for the Berlin Festival. And one of the people who was working on this daily magazine, he was from the Munich Film Festival and was the catalogue editor. And he said, we need somebody to do the English side of the catalogue. Could you come down to Munich? So in 1989, I go down in spring of 89 to Berlin, to Munich, and work then for the Munich Film Festival and on the catalogue. These were the days before internet, before Google. That year, the festival gave us a fax machine, so we could contact filmmakers and ask for information from production companies, sales agents by fax. It was always a problem getting contact with what was then the Soviet Union. The telephone line, the fax line was always engaged, and we always had to wait until the middle of the night, and then you would be able to get your fax through. I'd say, please send us information by courier. We need a photograph, and we need some documentation, because, as I say, there was no other way. Or else you went to a library and looked in some books to find out about the director's biography and filmography. My colleague, he had lots of copies of the magazine Variety, and so we had those which we could refer to try and put a video, a biography and a filmography together. But it was all really working on telephoning and faxing and just what you had available at your hands as a library of books. So I was then living in Munich, and it was at this time that I was already aware of, there were people I got to know who were international correspondents in Germany for film magazines, the business magazines. That was what interested me. There was a colleague who was responsible for Hollywood Reporter in Munich, somebody for Variety, and for Screen International. So there were these three international trade newspapers that report about production, distribution, about cinema, performance of films in cinemas, and financing. And in 1990, when I was starting to work again for the Munich Film Festival, I learned that the person who had been the correspondent for Screen International had left with many of his colleagues to set up a new magazine, which they were planning to turn into the new Screen International. That was their plan. And they were launching it in Cannes, the festival in May, calling it Moving Pictures International. But they hadn't reckoned with me. I was there in Munich. I had more of an academic background, but I had a knowledge of the German film industry, even if I didn't know the sales agents. And I studied German, so I didn't have a problem talking to people in German. Even some of my German colleagues didn't know I could speak English, or they had never heard me speak English over the years, because I always speak with them in German. But I got in contact again, it was by fax, and fax to the London office of Screen International, and said, I am here in Munich, and if you need a new correspondent, here I am. And they got in contact a couple of days later by telephone and said, yes, we need something, could you come to Cannes? This will be in 3 weeks' time. So that was, again, quite an experience to suddenly be going off to Cannes, especially since we were working on a catalogue of the film festival in Munich. But my colleague who was on the German side, he would always go to Cannes because he was also involved in helping to program the films for the festival. So I would have been sat back in Germany just waiting to hear which new films had been selected. Anyway, I went down to Cannes, and again that was quite an experience. Again, no internet, it's all just what you learned from reading in newspapers or what people told you. There were no mobile phones either. So if you made an appointment, if you planned to meet somebody for an interview, you had that interview. There was no last minute cancellation or texting to say, oh, can we do it another day? And so all you would have to do is every couple of hours go back to your hotel to see if there were any messages left for you at the reception, because that's the way they contact you, is to leave messages at your hotel. And you have to go back to your hotel and just check has there been an urgent message for you. So that made life, in many respects, less stressful, one might say. And it meant that, yes, a lot of my reports were gathered from meeting people just in the street, walking along, they tell me something, and that was a story, or at a reception, or a party. So now things are much more planned, and the strategy behind when they want to announce something, and it all comes through the internet, everybody gets it at the same time. So after having had that experience in Cannes, I then became the German correspondent for the magazine. I was responsible for Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. In those days, there was a print magazine. It appeared each week on Thursdays, only as a print magazine, and most of the print issues were distributed in England. You could either buy it at newsstands in London. I think there was also Edinburgh and Brighton station on the south coast. You could buy it there. Otherwise, most people subscribed and had it sent by post, so they should have got it by the weekend. People abroad, it would take a bit longer. I usually got my magazine on the Monday after that Thursday. And then, of course, it was also sold in America as well, Los Angeles and New York. And there was a whole network of correspondents. I had a colleague who was based in Russia, in Moscow, in Italy, Spain, France. Then there were the head office in London, and another office at that time in New York and also in Los Angeles. And correspondents were in South Africa, Australia, South America, and Asia, India. So there were in Israel, many countries, Greece. And when we get to see some of these people, one was working on the daily magazine in Cannes, because similar to what I had done in Berlin, there was a Screen International. I think they were the event elsewhere. So they had one in Cannes, which I was involved in a year later. And they did them at various other festivals and also markets. There is the American film market, which when I started in this, working at the Berlin Film Festival, the American film market was a week after Berlin. So Berlin is in February, and then at the end of February, you would have the American film market. And people would start leaving the Berlin Film Festival before the end of the market and the festival to travel to Santa Monica, to Los Angeles, to start doing the same thing, but without a festival, just a purely a market. And the people who were working on the dailies in Berlin would then have, well, there were no dailies then from the trade unions, but they only had the AFN. But then the AFN moved its dates to November to take the place of a market which used to be in Milan, in Italy. And there are other festivals over the years, Toronto, Hong Kong, and such, where there have also been daily publications produced by our magazine. Then there was a time when there was a change of management at the Berlin Film Festival, and the new manager, the new director, Peter Kostic, decided to have Screen International produce the daily newspaper for the festival. And before that, they had done it themselves, and after a certain point, then this new competitor, Moving Pictures, had taken over. But then when the new director came in, he decided to change many things, and one of those was to have Screen International do the dailies on behalf of the festival. That went on for 5 years, and then they decided not to have a daily, an official festival daily, and then Screen and plus the other trade publications decided to have their own dailies in Berlin, because they felt that the market was strong enough to accept it. And this is what dailies look like in Berlin. As with when we had the print weekly, which has now been turned into a monthly, more or less. Of course, there's advertising, which is this is here the Boris Glebnikov film, which was in competition this year. and the sales company had taken a very expensive front page advertisement for it. And then we have other ones here. Different. Sometimes the company takes a whole 2 pages to show all their films, and they give the times, the dates, and but before I get to this, in the year 2000, I worked for Screen for 10 years, and been living in Munich all that time, and I'd always wanted to go back to Berlin. I then had an offer to work for Wim Wenders, for his company, Road Movies, and they wanted me to be their press and PR manager. And this was at the time when Mr. Social Club was in the cinemas, was nominated for an Oscar, and won other awards, and was whichever cocktail bar you went into, you'd hear Buena Vista Social Club playing the soundtrack playing on the loudspeakers. And I thought it would be an interesting experience to be on the other side, to see how a production company operates. A production company which works with people like Ken Loach, Stephen Frears, and William's own films, of course. And it was also at the time when they were developing the project Better Like Beckham. And I was press and PR, which often meant just answering lots of questions from people who wanted to have Wim come to be a jury president, or have a retrospective, or do this or do that, receive a special award. And so I had to always gather all these inquiries and then send them on to his secretary. He is somebody, I think, probably like, say, Peter Greenway. They wouldn't have to make another film. They could just go around being jury president and receiving Lifetime Achievement Awards because they are very popular in the international festival film scene. But Wim was then at that time also very interested in digital filmmaking, and this was all new at that time, around the year 2000, 2001. And so he was working himself with the new digital cameras, and they also gave some young filmmakers also the opportunities to work with digital post-production and digital cameras. And then subsequently he's worked on 3D, as you know, with the film Pina, and he's now making. He started actually on Monday a new film with James Franco in Canada, which will also be in 3D, his first fiction film in 3D. So at that time he was living in Los Angeles, and a lot of people wanted to work for his company, write movies, because they thought they would be seeing him each day, but he was at that time working mostly in Los Angeles, but now he is based in Berlin. He's now come back to Berlin. So I was there for about a year at the movies, and then decided to return to journalism, back to Screen. They were quite happy for me to come back, and I think also my German producers and distributors also had missed me, which was nice to think that people had missed me. And so I came back to Screen, now based in Berlin. And over the last 10 years, Berlin has become an interesting city, with a lot of international productions shooting there. We've had, whether it's things like Inglourious Basterds, Tarantino, Speed Racer, the Wachowski, at that time, I think, brothers now, and we had Cloud Atlas with Wachowskis and Tom Tykwer, The International, another film, Tom Tykwer, and many international productions shooting in the city. But also a lot of the Berlin producers, young generation producers, are very internationally minded and are working on international co-productions with many countries, including such countries as Ukraine. There was admittedly Sergei Yezhnitz's film, which was with Ukraine, his last one, and also the previous one, My Joy. And we've also had films made with Kazakhstan, India, Russia, Turkey, a lot of films with Turkey, but there is of course a close connection between Germany and Turkey. So there are a lot of interesting producers working on projects which have a very international flavour to them. With the Berlinale over the last 10 years, with the new director, he's also developed various initiatives which have brought again more and more people to the city. Berlin, when it was West Berlin, had always been a very open city to artists, and they had a special residency which you could get a 6-month residency, and people like Jim Jarmusch and Andrzej Tarkowski had come to West Berlin for a scholarship when it was still West Berlin. And there were some people who then came who liked Berlin so much they stayed there. And now in the last 20 years there have been other scholarships which filmmakers can get. There's a program called the Lichtfeld program, and there, for example, there are two Georgian filmmakers, Dieter Sizadze and Nana Georgiadze, and both of them came to Berlin and then they stayed there. I know Nana is here, and she's in Tbilisi, but she also lives in Berlin, and Dieter lives in Berlin. And there are other filmmakers who have come, Benedikt Figalf from Hungary. He worked on a project when he was staying there, and many others as well. And now we have a residency program which the Berlin Film Festival organizes, and they have, filmmakers have 3 months they can stay and work on a project in Berlin. So that is on that side. Then they have what they call the Talent Campus, where initially they had 500 young filmmakers from all over the world who come during the film festival and have seminars and workshops. And they also have what they call Talent Press. This is for young film journalists, I think it's up to the age of about 32. You have to be able to speak and write in English. That is the only condition. So I'm sorry people on that side. You don't count. There are these different initiatives for young film journalists. They have it there where you go and see a film, you have to write a review, and you have some experienced journalists who read through your review and give you advice. And Rotterdam also has something like that. And I've also been involved in a similar young film critics workshop in Warsaw, which has been open to film critics from other countries, not just Poland. I was on this program one year. We had somebody from Hungary, a colleague from Armenia, and somebody from Bulgaria. So, and the festival director, Stefan, he is here in town, and he's doing a workshop from 11 o'clock at the film studio about marketing of East European films abroad. So I can check with him that film critics from Ukraine are able to participate, and then I would email the information to you, so you have the information at the time. That is in October. Also in October, Rotterdam is the end of January, and then Berlin in February. Now, as I say, I haven't been a trained journalist, but so it's been for me in a way learning by doing. And also I wrote film reviews at the beginning of my work at Screen International, but then over time I had to then just concentrated on the business side. So, I mean, the example, I know here in Russia you have, for example, Kino Business. That's a print magazine. You have that in Russia. And then there are various websites now. Screen International went online with a web service called screendaily.com in the year 2000. So when I left Screen, then they went online. And when I returned to Screen, I found it very useful having this online service because as a journalist it meant I could have more reports hearing. Germany has always been a very active country filmmaking, and also as I say, as a partner with other countries. And so I have plenty to write about, and not only in Germany, but then I have been visiting festivals further east, because we have two festivals in Germany which are dedicated to Central and East European cinema. There is one in April in Wiesbaden, it's called Go East, and then there is another one in Cottbus in November. And so through being at those two festivals, I have made lots of contacts, and people then invite me to their festival. And I am not a full-time member of staff at Screen. I'm a freelancer, so I have to do other things. I can't just live from being a correspondent at Screen. And with time, I have worked also as a moderator for discussions and pitchings. So I do the moderating for the pitchings in Sofia and in Cottbus, and I did it in Yerevan, and Vologda, and now in Moscow. And then we had, for example, yesterday there were works in progress, which I did the pitchings for, and I will do that again in October in Moscow, the Moscow Red Square screenings, and then I go to Warsaw and do the same thing with the producers in Warsaw, where they introduce films which are in production, where they're looking for either a festival to invite a film, or they're looking for somebody to sell the film. So through working like here on panel, again people get to know me and then invite me to their festival. So last year I went also to the Eurasia Film Festival in Kazakhstan in Almaty, which was a very interesting experience as well. A very dynamic young film scene, similar to what I think is developing here in the Ukraine as well. And I work also for the German Films Organization, which is a promotion agency which helps to promote German films at festivals abroad, and also to organize German festivals of German films at different cities in different countries. So I interview film producers about new projects and also actors and directors. I only really interview actors for that magazine. I don't interview actors for Screen because I don't find actors so interesting. They don't always have that much to say, and they're often very superstitious when you ask them what is your new project. They don't want to say anything too concrete because they are afraid that if they say something it might not happen or it's not 100%. So usually I'm talking to producers, directors, distributors, and film funders, politicians, because in Germany politics is very involved in how films are made as far as the funding of films. And also over the years, because of my attendance at the Berlin Film Festival, I also have had quite an in-depth knowledge of the European film policy, what happens in Brussels, what people are deciding on a European level as far as how the film and in general the audiovisual industry should be supported. As I say, we've now got the internet, which has meant that things have to happen so much quicker. There's always the thought that we must have it online as soon as possible before the other publications get the news. Before, when it was just the print magazine appearing on Thursday, I would have until a Wednesday lunchtime to prepare my story, and if it was really a very important story, then it would be on the front page, and I could then send it still on the by Wednesday lunchtime, and and I would know that it would appear on the front page, and that would be a really good exclusive story. So sometimes producers, studios have special relationships with certain publications, and so they say, well, we always give the exclusive to Variety. Ideally, they give it to me, of course. But so that can be very frustrating if you get the press release and it has already appeared in Variety, and then my office in London would say, why does Variety have it and we only have it now? And I think it's then probably because they have a special relationship. They think it's going to make sense to have the story appear first in Variety. Now Variety, I know you have a Variety blog. It's not the Ukrainian Variety Russia, but I've seen copies of it distributed here at the festival, which is, it doesn't have anything to do with Variety America, although some of the articles are originally appeared in the English language version and have then been translated. But for example, Andrei Plakov doesn't write for Variety, not Variety in America, he writes for Variety Russia, then Andrei writes for lots of things, he's everywhere. But you know his name. And so Variety, the American, is really concentrated on what's happening in Hollywood. So there's lots of news about what's happening in America, and especially on the West Coast, and then about things happening elsewhere in the world which could affect the American film studios and American producers. You know, there's a very successful German film which is #1, and then the new American film is only at #2. Then of course the American studios want to say, who is this new person? Why are they so successful? So that's, and Hollywood Reporter is more or less the same, naturally with the name, but they're more concentrated on what's happening in the United States, and also how international trends could influence their business. Whereas Screen, the office is in London. Admittedly, we do have an American editor now. She's from America, so she has a different perspective to a certain extent. But we have always seen ourselves more as the European business paper, and also giving more of a voice, I would hope, to independent filmmaking and to European film, but not ignoring what is happening in Hollywood, of course. So there's information about box office and about who's producing what, and new financing possibilities, which, of course, for people who are purely wanting to see the films and review the films, they're not necessarily interested in how the film is made, how it is financed. They're just interested in what they see on the screen. I like to see films, but of course I wait to the very end because I'm interested in the closing credits and seeing where the financing came from, who was involved in the film. So I had that sort of perspective as well, and which can be very interesting to see where the financing has come from, who was involved, and so on. There aren't so many of us who are doing it more of the business angle, and so if one of us leaves a paper, then it's very difficult to find successors, because it's not just a matter of somebody saying, okay, I will do it. It's all to do with contacts. Naturally, one does have the internet, you can Google, but you can't believe everything you read on the internet. Sometimes there are mistakes made, and then other people copy that, and somebody copies that, and so there are certain things which appear, which then, you have to be very careful. And then some production companies who want information from them, you look on their website. I looked on somebody's website yesterday, and they had last update 2009. So either they have such a complicated website that you can't open it, it's so technically complicated, depending on the strength of your internet connection, and as I say, then you have things which are out of date, and sometimes producers can be rather, they can't remember exactly when things happened, and so that can be very vague. I'll just make a break now, give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might want to ask at this stage before I continue. So, is there anything I've missed or something you would like to know a bit more about?
Maybe could you tell us in detail for opportunities for young Ukrainian directors to go for residence in Germany or to get a scholarship? Maybe you'll write some links after the lecture.
Sure, I can do, yes.
Thank you.
Now, are you all journalists, or some of you actually film directors who are also journalists? Or?
There is always a chance to become one.
So I know there's a colleague of mine who works for the broadcaster in Strasbourg, Arte. You probably heard of Arte. It's a cultural channel. It's originally French German, but other countries have joined it, and it's a very important television channel supporting auteur films, authors films, art house films, and such. And he was a journalist originally, then he joined a TV channel, but he always makes sure that he gets a press accreditation because it's the best, as we all know. And when he's in Cannes, he has the press accreditation. He doesn't have an industry accreditation. He has press because although of course you do have different categories, and in Cannes we have again certain categories which mean I think if you have the pink one with a yellow dot, that's the best, which means you get better access. People are queuing at say 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning to get in to the 9 o'clock screening, and there were occasions at the when there were screenings of Lars von Trier's films the last years, when film critics were fighting with each other, and it was absolutely chaotic scenes there, and people tried to get in to see the films. But I can tell you a little bit about the festivals I normally visit, and others which when my year starts. And these last couple of years, I go to a festival in Trieste, which is in Italy, near Venice. It's a festival called When East Meets West. When East Meets West. Trieste. It's the town of Trieste. It's near to Venice. And When East Meets West, it's a focus on films from Central and Eastern Europe. And the festival director and the person responsible for the pre-production event, they are here at Odessa for the first time. Then, of course, in February, really, most of the time is taken up for me with Berlin Festival. When you live in the town where a festival takes place, it's not so much fun. Berlin was a much bigger festival than, say, here in Odessa. But I'm sure all of you who live here in Odessa, when you go back to your flat, your apartment, you look in your refrigerator and there's no milk, or you haven't got any food left because you're out at the festival going to see films all the time. So before the festival starts, this year I did lots of buying of food, yogurts and milk and everything, so I would have enough things. But then, this is in February, often there are things happening, life continues, post, then the man wants to come to check the electric for the year, check the reading, so I have to be at my apartment for that. But anyway, Berlin. Then in March I would go to Sofia, the Sofia Film Festival in Bulgaria, and then to a festival in Vilnius in Lithuania, which is at the end of March. In April I have Go East, and this year I was also in the documentary festival in Nyon in Switzerland, which is near Geneva, and that's one of the leading documentary festivals. In May, of course, there is Cannes, but I have to admit I have not been to Cannes for several years because I have not been in the daily newspaper team in Cannes. But I always say to young film critics, I know a lot of them, you want to go to Cannes, but it's probably best to go to some other smaller festivals, international festivals first, and get a feel for international festival, and also to make contacts with people, other colleagues from other countries there. And also, I mean, at festivals like here, for example, you have the opportunity to interview Michael Winterbottom or last year Claudia Cardinale. You would never have a chance to meet them in somewhere like Berlin or Cannes because I learned this when I was at World Movies for Vendors. We had a film by Ken Loach in Cannes, and I had to tell the press person which journalists I wanted to interview Ken Loach. I had to nominate names, and I had so many names, and then people contacting me and asking me to put them on the list. And it could be that Ukraine is then, they just say CIS, and then it's the colleague in Moscow who gets the slot, and you here in Ukraine wouldn't have an opportunity to interview somebody in Cannes. And then the interview is not going to be one-to-one. You're not going to sit and talk to Michael Winterbottom for half an hour. You will be with 10 other people, and it's maybe 15 minutes, and then you find, my colleague tells me this from, goes each year from Germany, and she says she's there with these other people, and then there's an Italian man who cannot speak very good English, and he takes 5 minutes to ask a question in bad English, and then just says, do you believe in God? That's his question. Or what is your favorite serious question? Okay, there are the major press conferences like you would have here. They have them in Cannes, and there are possibly some colleagues from smaller countries who have their tape recorder, and then they tell their editor back home, I have an exclusive interview with Michael Winterbottom. Although 600 other people also got it. But, and I know if you have to do interviews and star interviews, yes, I hear this from the English colleagues, that the trend is that it's more and more to do with the stars and these small films, not from not so well-known directors, and not so well-known countries, have a harder time getting space in the newspaper. But if you still have space in a newspaper, it's moving more and more towards internet and online, and something which I don't do yet is blogging. I haven't got involved in blogging or Facebook, but I know some people do that as well as writing for a particular publication. So as I say, I would recommend if you have opportunities. Now, I don't know how many of you are members of your Ukrainian Film Critics Association. Do you have one? Was it? And because I am a member of my German Critics Association, and that means that I'm automatically a member of the Fipresci, which is the International Critics Association, and I can then become a member of their jury, and you can apply for your national association, and then they would submit you. And for example, I think it was 3 years ago now, when I was in Wiesbaden, I was in a jury for Fipresci with a young colleague from Poland, and when she went, she had just finished journalism school, and then later on she was in the Fipresci jury in Cannes. But anyway, Malvina and myself and Alec from here, we were together in the jury, and I hadn't really known him before. And then when a year later he said, I'd like to invite me here to Odessa, so that was a good contact, having been together on the jury, and we gave our our award, our Prestige Prize to Papa-Brebski's film, How I Spent This Summer. Which was quite funny because when Alexei came up on stage, of course he knew Alec and he knew me as well, because I had known him for many years from meeting once at the Berlinale and then seeing, and he'd been on the jury in Wiesbaden as well, and so on and so forth. So that was quite funny when he came up on stage to get the prize from us. But I have been I was in the Prestige jury in Warsaw, in Sofia, in Wiesbaden twice, because they had their 10th anniversary, and they decided to have members of previous juries to come back, and so I was asked to come back and be on with the Prestige jury again. But that's the thing as far as the Prestige. I was also in a critics jury in Palic in Serbia, and then I've been in different juries in other festivals. I was in a festival, Transylvania Film Festival, which is in June in Romania, a very nice festival, and in Poland, the Polish festival in Wrocław, which takes place next week. I should go there on Sunday. And in Slovenia, and again in Serbia. So again, it's usually the festival director knows me and asks me to come and be on their jury. And it's all been in Eastern Europe. I have to say this, I was also on the Prestige jury in Leipzig, in the documentary festival as well. So, but I don't have a particular speciality. I'm interested in really in anything. I was also on the short film jury in Romania, in Timișoara as well. So short films I find interesting, documentary, feature film. It's because I'm writing all about business. When I'm at the Berlin Film Festival, I don't see any films. So I look forward to coming to smaller festivals like here in Odessa, or now next week in Wrocław, to catch up on films which I have missed, which I have heard about, which have been in Cannes or Calabari or in Berlin. And I can see them at those festivals.
What can you say about the role of television in German filmmaking? About the role of television in German filmmaking? Because I heard that many young and not very young directors go from big screen to TV. What do you say? What can you say about it?
Well, that was part of my thesis, so I knew that television had always been very important for supporting filmmaking. And there are quite a lot of graduates from the film schools in Germany who they don't go to making feature films for cinema. They start making TV movies and then they stay in that. And there are some film directors, they've been to film school and then they say, I only want to make films for cinema and I don't want to work for television. Well, that's okay if you can afford to do that, because feature films, for directors, you don't make a film every year. Some people do. Ken Loach seems to. Some directors are able to do that, but many they have a big gap between films, and so they will then make TV movies to help pay the rent, or they might do commercials, which is another thing which they do. And then there is this trend now. I think what you're meaning is what happened now. We had in Berlin, for example, a series by Jane Campion. There's this new TV series, and there are also actors, Hollywood actors, who are now appearing more on TV programs, especially in the States, because the quality of the scripts and the productions are much better than what is being offered to them in the Hollywood, American feature film productions. So yes, there are. That has become more attractive to a lot of actors and directors in America, but also here in Europe as well. And often they have quite high budgets, very similar to feature film budgets. So I think many of the directors now, and also the actors, certainly in Germany this is the case, you have actors which you might know from the cinema. I think Till Schweiger is also known here in Ukraine, and he does his own cinema films, which he produces, he writes and directs and acts. And he is also now a detective in a German TV series, a detective series, which was all a very big thing this year, because he wanted to make it his own identity in it. So that was, yeah, so he started in television as well, in a sitcom, soap opera, so there's a mixture there. Yes?
What do you think, for a film critic, is it better to leave when the film is really bad, or to stay till the end and watch everything happen?
Oh, I know, it's difficult. This is why so many, well, film critics, but also people who are like distributors, they will sit on the end seat, so that they can leave quickly. Well, I mean, if it really is so bad, so awful, then, I mean, it is your time, isn't it? Your life, which is...
Could you compare the Ukrainian Odessa Film Festival with other festivals you visited and to underline some significant features of this festival which you haven't seen in the other places, and do the same in the attitude of Ukrainian films?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good what has been done here. It's good. I had this experience in Sarajevo when the Sarajevo Film Festival started, but they again invited more and more international guests to come here to see new Ukrainian films, the short films like several people were there last night, and also the new feature films, to see projects which are being presented tomorrow. Yesterday we had the works in progress. This is a way of helping the local industry here, but not only Ukraine, but further around the region, to become more professional. And this is what happened in Sarajevo, and then more people came, and it helped the local filmmakers, the producers, to develop contacts, and also the directors as well. They had an opportunity to meet colleagues from other countries and have an exchange. So I think that's important on the industrial side. And of course, there is for the local people here in Odessa, then they're able to see films over this week, which they would not normally have a chance to see. If you're film critics, I mean, if you are able then to be invited to festivals outside of Ukraine in the future, then you will have that privilege of being at the festival to be able to travel to visit other countries, and also to see films from other countries which you wouldn't be able to see back here. I know a lot of people are watching films and downloading. This is a thing which beforehand, you would hear in Berlin, everybody would say, have you seen the new Charismatic? Have you seen the new Kieślowski? And it was a real buzz, and they had to have extra screenings. Now people are able to see it, either they've had a DVD sent to them, or a special screening has been organised. And so that specialness has been diminished to a certain extent. So we've got the audience here, which can benefit. Another thing which of course makes life much easier for the international guests to come to Odessa, come to Ukraine, is we don't need a visa to come here. It's such a complicated thing going to Russia to get your visa, and then it's either expensive, or they make life very difficult for you. And so that is a real pleasure that there's there may be some countries where you you need a visa to come here, I don't know, but certainly as far as Germany and the United Kingdom is concerned, we only one, so that makes it, the access to the festival here very good. And as far as the dates, it seems to just fit in well between Karlovy Vary and as I say, there's Wrocław next week in Poland. Naturally, the dates are never ideal. There's always going to be one reason or other. For the last 2 or 3 years, Sarajevo was the same time as Odessa because Ramadan was at a different time and so forth. But they had brought Sarajevo forward from August, the end of August, to this week in July. So that would have, if that had continued, because initially I think Sarajevo thought, well, these dates aren't bad, but they've gone back to their old dates at the end of August, and that's better for Odessa. And so, as I say, and even for international journalist colleagues, the fact that it's a small enough festival where it's, you can meet people, and there aren't really those VIP lounges and anything. That's also important. And something which of course develops at the big festivals is you have so many corporate interests. So you have, like even in Locarno, which is in August, you have all the sponsors who have all their seats reserved. In the best place, they have an open-air screening on their town square, and all the best seats on the square are for all the sponsors. And we, who are the industry people or the journalists, we have to sit either right at the front or at the back behind the sponsors' seats, which is not ideal. And sometimes that can go a bit too far with all these having to meet the interests of the sponsors. So I think that's something again which you have to make sure we don't get to be too influenced by what the sponsors here want as well.
I want to ask one more question. How do you estimate the selection of Odessa's program? And I would like to hear you to highlight the trend in the modern cinema. You visited a lot of festivals, and what's the general between them? What topics do they show?
Well, one film I can recommend if you haven't seen it is a film called Oh Boy, which is on tonight. And I am possibly in the film because I was coming home one day from a press screening and got out of the underground train at my underground station, and I see 2 people running along the platform, and one of them I recognise, I wonder what he's doing, and then I recognise the other person, and then I realise it's a film, so I realise I mustn't say hi to the actors. It was a very low budget film. It cost like €300,000. That for us is low budget. It was a graduate film from the film school in Berlin, and it won several awards now at the German Film Awards. So I think that's tonight. I can recommend that one. And various of the other films as well. There's a film, a Russian film, which the jury member Franziska Petri is in by Severkonikov, which is I think it's also tomorrow or the day after. She plays a Russian woman. She doesn't actually speak Russian, but she spoke it phonetically, so that when they dubbed her with another Russian, you really think it is her because the movements are very authentic. So I can recommend that. Again, it's, naturally there are many films here which have been seen at the big festivals. I haven't seen so many of them, so it's an opportunity for me to catch some of them. Then there will be some more say, international premieres of the films from this region, and I'm sure in the Ukrainian films there are new films here, so that is good. trends, sort of modern trends. I mean, I know people have quoted me, I'm always talking about what I call the 3Ds in East European cinema. Not as in three-dimensional, but 3D. Drugs, death, and depression. And if you work the works in progress yesterday, there's quite a lot of death going on, and I'm sure the pitching's tomorrow. And but at the same time, yesterday there was a works in progress. There were other types of films, children's films. Okay, there was the horror film, which was a sort of American influence, but it's something different. It's not what often people expect, and what we and what festivals expect, and it becomes a sort of vicious circle that then the producers in, say, Romania, Ukraine, Macedonia, or wherever, think that is what type of film gets to be invited to Cannes or Berlin, so we have to make this film about social drama and people who are unemployed and they're always drinking vodka, and this is what people in the West expect, and so this is what we have to produce, and so it just continues, and so it's always good when you have a comedy, something different, and it looks as if there are attempts. Sometimes films are only really for local interest, local consumption. But I know there are some festivals where, like Octopus for example, where they show local box office hits. So say a film which has been very successful here will then be shown in a special program just to show what the Ukrainians see as their local blockbuster, what would be, say, in Russia or in Lithuania, a big hit. And sometimes it's a comedy, but not always. They're often historical dramas, which are often specifically about the history of a particular country. So, yeah, the 3Ds is a thing which we need to get out of. I mean, it seemed that there were certainly attempts, romantic comedies and the like, being produced here. And I think they're trying it also now in Romania as well, because in Romania a lot of the films again were sort of winning lots of prizes at festivals, but not very popular back home in Romania. They made lots of Golden Palm, but they were not really things that people wanted to go and see on a Friday night at the cinema. So there's that. Okay, you have all these sequels and these big budget films in America which don't seem to be working. They're not. So maybe there'll be a change of attitude and trying something different, something new now. It's very easy always to talk about just Hollywood, and of course there is the American independent scene, American independent films, where they have to exist without any sort of funding. So they don't have the type of funding we have in Germany, where at the moment there were some projects yesterday, and I'm sure tomorrow, 100% financed by the Ukrainian state domain. So if Ukraine became part of the European Union, that would have to come to an end, because it's not allowed by the rules. In the European Union, you can only finance up to 50%. Or if it's a difficult film, or from a small country, which Ukraine would be considered, then I think you've got to about 7%. So, but aesthetically, I'm not really sort of qualified to tell you any specific trends. I mean, the 3D, I don't know if that's going to continue. There were all sorts of great announcements that films would now be only made in 3D and documentaries would only be made in 3D, but this doesn't seem to be happening. And okay, I know that people are saying, yes, we have record box office and we've never had so much money made at the cinemas, but it's not surprising when you have all the 3D films which are cost extra. That's mathematically it's obvious that it's going to be more.
I wanted to ask about the fashion obligation for film critics in Europe. Does it exist? How strong is it? And where is it thought to be the best place to study?
I mean, the position of film critics, it's becoming harder and harder for the, I know for my colleagues, often they're reduced, it's just not to actually write a review, but to just say how many stars, and this is a combination, or else their editor tells them that an advertisement has been bought by a certain company, and so we need to have a nice big interview with the star or the director of that film. So that can compromise the critics. And then publications are, some of those are now no longer appearing in print, they are online. Then the coverage of cinema on television, there used to be magazine programs which would be very extensive reporting about cinema, new trends and about new films, and those appear less and less on television. And then what happens is that some TV stations just buy the making of and show that, which is again, it's just a promotion. You have, as I was saying about having to sign contracts that your review will only appear at a certain time. With interviews, sometimes, I don't know if you have